Hi, Lewis. Nice to have you here on our podcast. I'm Luca, the founder of the Living Care Company, and we love to have people who provide services and products to those requiring care. And that's what we've got you here today to have a chat about that. What is it that you do, Lewis, if you can sort of share that with us?
Yeah, well, thanks very much for having me, and hi everyone else. So I'm Lewis. I developed jelly drops. Jelly drops are essentially 95% water sweets that are designed to help people living with dementia stay hydrated. Essentially, these are some here. This is raspberry flavor, and I was inspired to create them with my late grandma Pat. She had dementia for about 8 years, but about 5 years in, her condition dramatically declined, and family were basically told to expect the worst. And it wasn't until, unfortunately, she was rushed to hospital that they realised it wasn't her dementia, it was dehydration that had sort of led her to end up there. And thankfully, after 24 hours of IV fluid, she made a good recovery and went on to enjoy a good quality of life for years after. But that's what sort of initially shocked me into sort of realising how big an issue it was and wanted to try and help.
Made you sort of almost skip to the idea of jelly drops? Was it, did you notice that grandma sort of really enjoyed sweet things, or what
Yeah,
made you
well, it took
come to
quite
that
a
conclusion?
bit of time to get there because I guess it's not super obvious sweets necessarily being sort of the answer. Basically, most of the time Grandma had dementia, I was at university, and actually at the time when Grandma was struggling with hydration, I was doing a postgraduate course at the Royal College of Art and Imperial. And they do a course called Innovation Design Engineering, which doesn't really mean much, but basically you could have 2 years to sort of work on anything you like. So it was a fantastic opportunity for me, if nothing else, to go and see a bit more of Grandma. So for my graduation project, essentially, I took 6 months to sort of try and help her, essentially. And through that process, spent about a month living in her care home, sort of speaking with other residents, their family members, the care staff, speaking with dementia psychologists, doctors, and I guess came
You
across.
were actually living in the care home.
Yeah, I didn't sleep there, but I was basically there first thing in the morning to late in the evening, and Grandma's actual house was not too far away, so I could sort of shuttle back and forth, which was handy. So basically spent a long time there, but, more probably in all the years before sort of combined, which was great to spend that time with Grandma. But I guess through that period, the insights that came through it and observing a lot of the challenges with hydration firsthand led me to sort of develop the sweets. And I guess what was behind that was starting from why people with dementia struggle with drinking. There's loads of reasons. Maybe people don't feel thirst. They might not equate drinking with quenching thirst. They might not recognize cups or have the dexterity to use them. And often when I would go to Grandma's care home, perhaps Grandma pour the drinks out, not really understanding what it was, or put food in the drinks, perhaps fall asleep in the chair and it spill. But the biggest problem really was trying to encourage or sort of support people with drinking. And often, when there was a lack of understanding about what you were trying to help, it could be often quite frustrating for the person you're trying to support. But I did notice that finger foods seem to be a lot more intuitive. Removal of
Yep.
cutlery help reduce distraction, just seem, more intuitive, more sociable. Grandma would like to eat when those around her are eating and would like to share her food. But still, it was a bit hit and miss, if people would always engage with their food, I guess, depending on what it was. But I found that generally sweets universally sort of had a very enthusiastic response. Generally I'd go around the game and so the residents would ignore me, which is fair enough. But if I had a box of chocolates, then suddenly everyone's, wanting to have a quick chat and take a handful. So that sort of gave me the idea to essentially sort of use that as a vehicle to try and help people independently, enthusiastically hydrate themselves.
It's really interesting. So obviously, you knew the need was there, which was for increased hydration for a lot of those with dementia, and then you noticed that those with dementia tend to work well with finger foods, and then thought, okay, let's apply that to their drinks. You must have really got to know your grandmother a lot better, as well as a lot of other residents. My daughters recently both worked in a care home, so they really got to know a lot of the residents really, really well. But I take it, well, it wasn't just your grandma you were sharing time with, spending
Exactly.
time with.
I think actually the first insight around the sort of universality of the response was not food related. I thought it was actually my grandma's teddy bear. So I think that's also another common thing. I guess there's a few things in care homes that tend to cut through, like music and teddy bears and sweets. That I guess in my grandma's case, as an example, she wasn't quite feeling as as enthusiastic as she often was. you could get this teddy bear out and immediately she would sort of light up and hug it and everything would be sort of fine again. And,
Right.
a
Yep.
very consistent response. And I guess sometimes, there's not that much stuff that does get a consistent response. Um,
Yep.
so I was trying to find like a food version of that, but the teddy bear was the first sort of, I guess, inclination I had that there was stuff that could, often get a very sort of enthusiastic response. I think often sort of teddies and dolls and things like that in care homes do tend to be a sort of staple in those settings, and people sort of seem to get comfort from them quite often, I guess like many people do. But teddies and dolls aren't quite as universal as sweets even, and sweets generally in the care home, like I said, you know, all the residents would sit up and want to have a chat if you're offering sweets out and, have a full conversation with you. And, often people that perhaps I'd never even heard say sort of full sentences to anyone with, "Oh, thank you very much." It seems to sort of unlock like a sort of deeper sort of memory. And I guess, compared to the alternative, and they're not to replace drinking, they're just an extra tool. But, often when you're trying to support someone drinking, like I said, it can be a bit frustrating for the person you're trying to help because they don't perhaps quite understand what you're trying to help them to do. But sharing a pack of sweets is very sociable. It's just like a social prop, really, that gives us a sense of sharing. So sometimes I couldn't really have a conversation with my grandma at some points. The vocabulary wasn't there, but having something physical you can share and say, "Oh, you like, orange, I like strawberry, and you have one, I'll have one." The way it's got wider exposure from that university project was I took a video of my grandma eating the first prototype. So I made this tray at university in my sort of student flat, came up with my own recipe, showed it to her and filmed it. And, she immediately recognized them as a sweet, was easily able to pick them up. And she went and sort of basically ate 7 drops in the first sort of 10 minutes, which, for me to get her to drink the equivalent would have taken a lot longer. But, she was very sort of enthusiastic and independent and engaging with it. And I thought, that was a
Brilliant. How much is there in one item? Did you show it on the camera?
Yeah, so these are slightly different now from that initial one because I suppose over the last few years since we launched, we're very fortunate to have a really engaged community and we've worked very closely with them, I guess, sort of pooling the insights from tens of thousands of people that have had the product rather than just that sort of initial experience of grandma's home. But each pack, so a pot like this, it now contains 50 ml. So the idea is people often have a few pots throughout the day. Perhaps that would equate to sort of 200 ml throughout the day. And I guess for people typically struggling with hydration, that can represent a significant portion or a significant boost.
Just going back to that initial spark of inspiration you had and putting those things together to then go, oh, okay, let's try making a hydration solution together with sweets. How many years have you been developing this idea now from when that first trial that you did with your grandmother? I suppose you
Yeah.
did a trial with grandmother.
Yeah.
But, how many years ago was that?
So it took about 6 months, I guess, to get to that sort of concept, that conclusion from initially sort of wanting to help grandma to realizing, sweets could be a good vehicle for that. I should say they're also sugar-free. So when we say sweets, they're
Oh,
vegan,
okay. Yep.
they're gluten-free, they're sugar-free, they're basically free from
Yep.
everything, with no allergens. There's about 9 calories per pot, so they're sort of guilt-free as well.
Okay. Yep.
But my mum was a dentist, so she was quite keen to not have sugar in them as, all hygiene's also another key consideration. But to come up with that initial concept was about 6 months. That was about mid-2018. And then I was just graduating, put a video of grandma eating her drops online, applied to a competition. And then within a few weeks, people had taken that video, sort of reposted it on Facebook and places like that. And it soon had about 100 million views. And I was getting thousands of messages a day. And, at this point, I was still making them on a relatively small scale. So it took about 18 months from that point to develop a scalable product, file IP. We had to make our own production facility because of the uniqueness of the product. And we were able to launch in the UK in 2020. But given we had that sort of global exposure very early on, we then went on to launch in the US in 2022. And last year, end of last year, we launched in Canada as well. And to date, we've supported hydration for about 60,000 people in those 3 markets, pretty sort of evenly split between the UK and North America.
Amazing. Truly amazing. How does someone that is needing hydration, do they sort of get a subscription or do their loved ones get a subscription for them with jelly drops?
Yeah.
How do you actually get this to your clients?
Yeah, so at the moment, jelly drops are used, by a number of NHS trusts and hundreds of care homes, but a large proportion of people also buy them directly from our website. Often, like you said, the family of loved ones living with dementia, and they can be purchased either as a a one-time purchase in a box of 21 pots or 42 pots. But a lot of people, I guess, value the subscription aspect of it as well, as it being a repeatable thing that gives opportunities for savings and more frequent deliveries. So people can subscribe to a 42 pack pot and they can choose their subscription frequency. It could come every week, it can come every 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, depending on people's needs. And I should say that's a super flexible subscription. So you can cancel any time. There's no sort of tie-in period. You could cancel the day after you purchase it. And, appreciate people's, situations sort of change. And yeah, there's no sort of lock-in aspect of that. It just a value add in terms of knowing they're sort of going to turn up every week. You don't need to think about it.
On the face of it, you might think, well, a few jelly drops a day isn't going to make that much difference. But actually, just tell me what's, say, an older person whose mobility is quite low and activity levels are quite low. What is a healthy hydration level for them in terms of the volume of liquid that they need? And what difference does this product make in basically going from inappropriately low level of hydration to a good level of hydration?
Yeah, so I suppose in terms of what is an appropriate level of hydration, I suppose probably first and foremost, it's best assessed by a medical professional. But it's not my, I guess, background to say in people's specific cases because it can be different for different people. But I know from working with a lot of care homes that they would perhaps typically aim for a minimum of about 1,500 ml a day. And that can be, through drinks and foods and jelly drops as, a source of that hydration. So in some of the trials that care homes have done, for example, they found that people are getting on average about 250 ml boosts from jelly drops a day for a period of time. This is over a period of months. And that as a proportion to keep people towards that 1,500 ml was actually quite pivotal in sort of keeping people in a healthier hydration space. And I think, really the value of jelly drops is a sort of less than often boost that is, people can have independently and, it fosters that sort of social interaction as well. And that can sort of keep people in that sort of healthier space as like an extra tool, essentially. But again, it's not to replace fluids as such. It's just to keep people topped up, essentially.
It's really interesting. What are the nutritional benefits of jelly drops, Lewis?
So jelly drops are 95% water. They're sugar-free, vegan, gluten-free, free from allergens. But in terms of nutritional benefits, other than the hydration, they contain B vitamins, so B12, B9, B6, and they aid cognition and the immune system and a number of other things that help keep people healthy. Each pot contains 20% of the RDA.
Are jelly drops appropriate or safe for people with pre-diabetes and diabetes where they really need to keep an eye on blood sugar levels?
Yes, so a number of our customers have diabetes and can still enjoy jelly drops. So they're sugar-free. They contain around 2 grams of carbs per pot. So as part of a balanced diet, they should be appropriate for people with diabetes. But if anyone had any concerns on that, recommend speaking to a healthcare professional.
Where can you buy jelly drops? What I take it you can buy them on the website. What's your website address?
Jelly drops are available either as one-time purchase or subscription on our website in the UK, the US, and Canada, and that's jellydrops.com. And yes, on there you can find more information about jelly drops, read reviews from our fantastic community, and purchase.
Thank you. Do hospitals and care homes use jelly drops?
Yes, so jelly drops are used by a number of care home providers to support their residents perhaps struggling with hydration, but also incorporate them into activities and other aspects of well-being where jelly drops can provide great benefit. And we're also used by a number of NHS trusts, not only for people living with dementia, where perhaps hydration has become an issue as part of recovery, perhaps, but also for a number of other users, elderly people post-op, perhaps hip replacement, things like that, but also people potentially going through chemotherapy and with other conditions where hydration becomes more of a concern. We've developed them on these sort of universal design principles, which mean they're not so much sweets for people with dementia, they're sweets that anyone can enjoy. And it was really important, I felt, that they were sort of stigma-free, and a lot of things often in care homes can be quite undignified in a way, It's cranes to lift people out of chairs, and it's sippy cups and bibs, and perhaps, people don't like them being used on them, and people don't really like using them. So I thought it was really important that jelly drops sort of, just look like sweets and just are sweets essentially that anyone can enjoy and can be shared. And I think as a result of that and the branding being very sort of typical sweet branding, it means that many other people have found value in the product as well that also struggle with hydration for perhaps slightly different reasons, but still very much benefit from it.
And where do you think jelly drops will go in the future?
So, we've been very fortunate to have a very engaged community. We've changed almost every aspect of the product since that initial concept I came up with, sort of texture, shape, size, the format it's delivered, the flavors. But, fundamentally, really, jelly drops are a delivery system at the moment. They're geared towards hydration, but we know we can deliver many more benefits through a similar format. Recently, we've added the vitamins, which is an extra nutritional benefit, but we'll be looking in the future to deliver even more benefit through formats like this and aim to support people in other ways, such as tackling malnutrition as well. So, yeah, I think, jelly drops really came from, I guess, a bit of a different way of thinking about it. And we really try and retain that sort of innovation to what we do and make the product the best it can be and really support people in as many ways as we can. So we've got a few exciting developments sort of in the pipeline.
Well, that's really interesting. I'll keep my eye on it. But just tell us again your website, if you would.
Yeah, so they're available at jellydrops.com.
That's pretty simple, isn't it? But brilliant to meet you, Lewis. Thank you very much for your time, and I will hope to speak to you soon.
Fantastic. Well, great to meet you, and thanks very much.